Hey, everybody, Randy Patterson here. And boy, do I have something a little off the beaten path, not by much, but a little bit. As you know, I normally interview artists who are responsible for their own work and recording their own music and that type of thing. And I love doing that, and I continue to do that, will continue to do that. But I wanted to bring something a little bit different to your attention, and that is the area of tribute bands. They're a lot of fun, especially if they're bands that you don't normally get to see. I know one of my favorite ones was Australian Pink Floyd that I saw, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago. Love them. They're great. If you get a chance to see them, go see them. But a dear friend of mine, David Lowry, formed a Pat Benatar tribute band called Heartbreaker, America's tribute to Pat Benatar. I've seen them perform, and they are phenomenal. David is the guitar player for the band and owner of the band. He owns the act, and each one of the musicians in the band are top shelf professional musicians. No slouches, any of them. Neither are the vocalists. When I tell you you're going to love hearing them live, you will. And so I had the opportunity to talk to my friend Dave. I've known him for almost near the inception of Boomerosity, not quite, but close, within the first 2 years of it, in fact, because he was managing at the time Damon Johnson, who was a guitar player for Alice Cooper and Brother Kane and other bands. I mean, Damon is a friend of Boomerosity's. I've interviewed him several times, and the first time I did was when David was managing him. So anyway, David's got this band going now, this tribute band for covering Pat Benatar. And I wanted to talk to him about what it takes to do a tribute band like this. So without any further ado, here is my first interview with David Lowry. And if you would, please, when you get done listening to it, would you hit the subscribe button? It'll help us out a lot. Take care. Well, man, thanks a million for taking the time to chat with me about this, buddy. You know, as I'll say in the intro, we go back something like 12 or 13 years. I know I touched base with you for the Damon Johnson, the first Damon Johnson interview I did, and you were handling him at the time, guitarist for Alice Cooper at the time, one of them.
Right, so that was probably 2010 or 11, I guess.
Yeah, well, I launched in 2009, so yeah, I had to be 10 or 11. So it's been a while. Been a while.
Long time. So it lasts longer than most.
Well, when you're not looking at it for an income, I guess it's easy to do, you know. So,
I guess.
And I'm just a glutton for punishment. So, but man, what a surprise it was to hear what a great guitar player you are. And I mean, I heard you noodle around that before you launched the band we're about to talk about. But
back then, and thank you for that, but back then I wasn't really playing, so I'd kind of gotten out of it. I had told Damon that if he needed a guitar player, that I was available, but nobody really knew anything about me. I didn't have any videos out back then or nothing like that, and other than whatever we had with that one band I'd toured around the world with. And I didn't have any control over that. That was all owned by that band. And although I ran the band, I didn't own it.
Right.
So there wasn't really much to see, and what was out there was such low quality that I didn't really want anybody seeing it anyway. I mean, some of the imagery was impressive, but the audio quality was just horrific. No. And we had one show in China where the backdrop is one of those big, huge pagoda stages, and it's gorgeous and beautiful, but the sound crew had absolutely no idea what they were doing. Everything was distorted and sounded absolutely horrible, and it's like I couldn't use that for anything other than proof that I've played somewhere overseas. So nobody really knew. And I was so sick of dealing with musicians, I just didn't want anything to do with the business. So I kind of got out of it and went on to other things. And so, yeah, nobody back then would have really known. Most of the people today, they knew me for managing and they knew me for putting on shows, but they didn't know I could actually play.
Right.
So when I would talk to them about they're playing or whatever, they'd be like, what the fuck do you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Who are you?
So, right. Yeah.
Well,
And I got a lot of that when I first started putting up videos. It was like, holy shit, I didn't know you could even play. So,
well,
yeah.
it's always
Troy didn't know I could play either for the first year I worked with him.
and you also had some involvement with the Prince organization once upon a time, yeah?
Yeah, but I mean, everybody in Minneapolis did really. Out of all those people, I was probably the least talented for sure. But I didn't work on the music side of things. I worked on the merchandise side of things. So, I don't have the accolades of saying, I got to play music with Prince other than whenever he would do his 2 a.m. parties. And every now and then, if they knew you could play, they'd make you get up and play or something like that. So I got to do that a couple times, but never, it was never a thought in his head to put me on a stage with him or do anything in the studio or nothing like that. I mean, although his guitar players were never flat out amazing, they were good at what they did for what they did. His drummers were always fucking amazing. His keyboard players were always amazing for sure. But his guitar players were always pretty average, really.
Did you have any dealings with Mickey Free at all? I interviewed him a year or two ago. It was with Shalimar, and then he did some work with Prince too.
No, that you'd be surprised at how deep that scene is. So you've got the whole time and Morris Day and all that. You've got Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, Janet Jackson, that whole crew. I was probably closer on that side with being friends with people than the Prince thing. Greasy Meal, which was a R&B funk band out of Minneapolis, which was half of those people played with Prince. And I knew those guys, quite well because of the scene and going out to the clubs. Every Monday night, there's a funk night called Dr. Mambo's Combo that still goes on to this day. Wow. And a bunch of us would get up there and play, and Bobby Bland was a regular staple playing drums with them on Monday nights, and other guys would come in and play. I was the guy that, because I went to school there and I knew a few of these people and I worked with some of those people, they would throw me a bone now and then and just let me get up and play. Except for Bobby Bland was actually a big fan of mine.
Really?
And so, wow. Yeah. Very he came out, the first time he really realized who I was, he came out, we were doing I can't think of what it was called, but it was a cancer benefit that they did every year. Johnny Lang was out on the outside stage and we were on the inside stage. Whoa. Inside of that same venue, right, not 100 yards from each other. And Bobby Bland was in there watching, and we're up there. I'm doing this band called the Funky Vatican, which was a cover band that was a Christian band, but they would take songs by Prince or some R&B artist, whatever, Ohio players, things like that, and change the lyrics so that it didn't say anything untoward.
Sounds like another band I know called Apologetics. They did the same thing.
Right. So he was in there watching a show one day, and I'm up there doing my best, whatever, and jumping out in the audience and letting people play my guitar and just putting on a show. And he stopped me, and when I was walking to the back of the club after we got done, he goes, "Man, I just realized who you are. You're a badass." Best compliment I ever got in my life. I swear to God. And so then from then on, he would always try to get me up on a stage or do whatever and whatever. He never realized, like, I can't just jump on a stage and play a song I've never heard before. I'm not that kind of musician. You can tell me what key you're in, and I can fake my way.
Improvisational or impromptu.
Right. So I like to have a little notice so I can at least run through the changes a couple times or something. So I would turn him down more often than not, unless it was something I was fairly sure I could fake. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, that was the scene. I mean, they all kind of blended together, right? So the only thing was with Prince, his band would change so often, so fast, that literally everybody at some point or the other had something to do with that, organization, because he doesn't pay on time, if at all. And people just didn't want to deal with the bullshit. Like, I had to walk around with a pager every day, and I couldn't leave the city without prior permission in case he needed something. Everybody had that. So yeah, and all I do is set up this fucking merchandise website, right? I mean, there's no need for me to be on a pager of any kind, but everybody that was employed by him was required to have one of those.
Wow.
So it was kind of ridiculous. And
yeah, Mickey was telling me that he was a strict taskmaster in the studio and rehearsals too. That if you were late, you had to pay, drop some cash in the jar. And he was.
That's where I got my trick from, because everybody now that talks to me goes, "What do you mean you charge people who are late?" Absolutely, but see, the people will show up without money these days, right? So they would get around that. So we just dock you 25% of your pay the next show.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's where I learned that from, because everybody is late all the time. So Nashville's probably the worst I've ever seen as far as that goes.
If they show up at all, huh?
Well, yeah, there's some of that, but I haven't dealt with that too much. It's more people just being completely disrespectful or showing up on time, but they haven't learned the song, so they're trying to write out a chart real quick. So now we got to waste 30 more minutes while you're writing out a chart.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, and it just got to be a bit ridiculous because, here in Nashville, like depending on the weather or the time of day, it's an hour to a 2-hour drive for me to get from home to my rehearsal space. Right, and so the later you make me, the later I'm getting home. And I don't drive well at night. I actually fall asleep at the wheel at night. So. So I get really pissed about that, and everybody knows. Like, I won't drive on band trips or anything because of that. I'll drive in a couple hours during the day if I need to, but for the most part, I don't drive at all. So yeah, we put that in place because I saw what it did under that camp, and I knew that it would work. I also charge them $10 every time they say, "Oh, well, let's listen to the song," when they can't remember their parts.
Whoa.
So I have a little thing there that they have to scan for the Venmo account, and you have to pay $10 every time you want to listen to the song.
Well, we won't name names, or I won't. You can if you want to. But that other little tribute band I saw you play with east of Nashville, or Knoxville, I'm sorry, west of Knoxville, that I think that same discipline could have been used. I mean, from what I witnessed, so
they called me and asked me to come back. I said, not a chance in hell. Those were my exact words. Not a chance in hell. Still good friends with the singer. He still calls me for advice. And I said, okay, I'm going to say this. I don't know what you're going to do about it, though, because you never listened the first 50 times. Like, man, you're harsh. I said, dude, it's the truth. Yeah, the band itself, it wasn't bad. It's the singer in that one that really struggled. And then, I got to the point where, friends or not, I was getting to the point where I regretted taking that gig, and I didn't want to practice, and it just wasn't fun anymore. So I had to leave, and I told them, said, you can't run a shift like this. I said, number one, your show dates are not vacations. It's not a chance for you to go downtown or take your wife all these wonderful places, or go hang out on the beach. Especially you. It's your band. You're the band leader. You have to be there for everything. And he would try to do shit like that, or he would decide to stay later and let somebody drive his truck and all the band gear back home. And I said, number one, is anybody insured for that? Number two, who's paying for the gas? Right? Number three, who's going to be responsible if something gets stolen? And all these kinds of things. And he just didn't understand. I said, that shit can't happen. And so the last gig we did away in Florida, he tried that same shit. Me and the keyboard player drove back from Florida in his truck, and he gave us $180 in cash, hoping that was enough to get back. And it was just barely, by like an eighth of a tank.
Whoa.
But and I had extra money, and I knew that because I had actually loaned him money on the way down to put gas in the truck. But I told him, I said, it's not so much that I mind loaning you the money, although this shit should be already socked away somewhere beforehand, or you have a band credit card or something. But it's the expectation that people are just going to let you go on vacation and then do your job for you, or that you don't understand the importance of you being there and running your band or being responsible. None of the rest of us are getting a vacation. We just drove 12 hours to go play a shitty ass show for you, and then you're expecting us to do all the work to get back while you go hang out on a boat, that kind of crap. And so I said it doesn't go over very well. And so he's basically had to reform that whole band. I know that I left, the keyboard player left, I think the bass player left, but I'm not sure. The singer left, the chick singer left. The horn players are still there. The drummer's still there.
Well, I think I told you at the gig, I didn't even think he sounded all that much.
He doesn't sound anything like
Phil.
No.
And I mean, the fact that he actually had some people at that theater, that venue, was surprising to me, but it was, but
it just,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, a lot of people love that show because they can't tell. They're tone deaf. Yeah. So, you get away with it to a certain degree, and he rented that theater. So he can always go back and rent that theater again. Yeah. But there's venues that I can't get in now because I played there with him and he was so bad that it reflects on me. That was another one of the reasons I left.
Oh, man.
Because now they're thinking, no, even if they, like just a theater in Florida or a venue in Florida, they love me. One of the owners is actually contacting me, trying to get me to do another Western tribute show with him. I said, why are you calling me? You won't even have my band down there. Because what are you talking about? I said, your partner, blah, blah, blah. He says he wants to see me live. When he was gushing all over me the night I was there, saying if it wasn't for you and the singer, this thing would be complete and utter shit. Mm-hmm. This female singer. So, he goes, I don't know, I'll find out. Then he says, yeah, he doesn't want to take that risk. I said, you can see the live video. None of it's doctored. We don't overdub anything. It's all there. But yeah, so I mean, that's just kind of pisses me off because at first he was super excited to have me come out and do that, but then all of a sudden it was like, So, yeah.
Well, I mean, if it's any consolation, with where you're at now, I think it's a testament to your professionalism. I mean, like I said, known you for quite a while now, at least in entertainment years, almost like dog years. I've known you forever, so,
right.
But so, in every endeavor you've pursued, you've done so with excellence. And I think so with your current band. So before we dig into that, I want to ask you, for the benefit of those who'll be watching this, explain to people what the difference is between a tribute band and a cover band.
All right, we'll start with a cover band. A cover band is a band that gets together and take this with a grain of salt, right? But in general, how we, or at least most of us, talk about this, the cover band, you can get away with playing it however you want. You can ad-lib parts, you can not nail all the parts, you don't have to sound like the band, you just have to play the song in some form. Most cover bands do, a good representation, right? 70, 80% there, whatever. How much they sound like the band is a whole different thing whatsoever. They're not held to the same standard as a tribute band. A tribute band is, when you go to see a tribute band, you're expecting to really relive some of that nostalgia. So you're expecting them to look like that band. You're expecting them to sound like that band. You're expecting them to nail the parts like that band. A tribute band, with the exception of either an occasional flub here or there, or you're missing parts because you can't cover all 5 guitars that are on that album, or whatever the case is going to be. It's going to be pretty much nail on the head accurate. That's the way it should be. It's a whole different standard. You've got to know your parts inside and out. There's no winging it involved. So you're going to pick the most popular version of that song and play that exactly it is that the people are used to hearing, not the live version of the song, the album version of the song, right? I see a lot of tribute bands going out there and they're trying to play some obscure live version from, the Montreux Jazz Festival from 50 years ago that nobody's ever heard before. And your timing's off, all these chord changes might be different, or a different outro, or whatever the case is going to be. And people are not expecting that. They're expecting to hear what they hear on the album every day. So that's really the difference. It's a whole different level of excellence in the way you execute it. That doesn't mean the people in the cover bands are less talented. Doesn't mean they couldn't. It just means the pressure to be exact isn't there.
Yeah.
Tribute bands tend to get paid a lot more money because they're bringing that to the table, whereas cover bands don't.
Gotcha.
Cover bands will do a variety of different material from all kinds of artists. Tribute bands tend to do one, maybe two artists. Tribute bands tend to cover artists that have a deep catalog of hits, or at least they should if they want to make decent money. If you're a tribute band and you've got a band with 4 hit songs, you're not going to make a whole lot of gigs because that's not enough to keep an audience entertained.
That's right.
But I mean, that's really it. It's just a level of expectation difference and how it's executed more than anything else. But I will say that tribute bands are more for musicians who get it than an average musician who doesn't want to put in the work.
Right.
So we all know the stereotype about musicians being lazy, and they are. So if your band isn't into executing at that level, that detail, putting in the work to nail all those parts, probably shouldn't be the people that are in your band. You
Right.
do need musicians who have that skill set to want to sit there and grill that song over and over and over until they can play it effortlessly and not mess it up a lot.
So now that we discussed the differences, tell people about your tribute band and where the reason why we're doing this call is you're coming again to Knoxville at the Open Chord.
Right.
And so for even the Knoxvillians, tell us about your band.
Well, now take everything I said and throw it away. No, I'm just
because of the guitar player, right?
Mostly because of me. Yeah, I'm too busy to do my job. Our tribute, Heartbreaker, America's tribute to Pat Benatar, is different in the sense that we really try to capture the live aspect of what Pat brings to her show. We do the album versions with a couple exceptions. But if you've ever seen Pat live, you know they improvise a lot. They don't ever hardly play the album version of a song. Neil Giraldo's constantly making up new guitar parts, playing solos differently, messing with the arrangements. Sometimes they'll do something like Shadows of the Night acoustically because they don't have the band and they don't use tracks really to bring that huge sound that song has. Now, we don't do that. The only song we ever do acoustically is We Belong, and even that will probably go away to a full electronic version. We don't use tracks either except for on Love Was a Battlefield because you have to have that Lindrum loop going through there. But we try to bring that live essence of what she is. Now, we play the song almost note for note every time. There's a couple songs out there that are deeper cuts where if Neil is just kind of doing something really funky in the lead and it doesn't make a lot of melodic sense or whatever, I'll play one of his more popular live solos. I think I do that. What do I do that on? Sex is a Weapon, I think. Mm-hmm. And then we have a song called Everybody Lay Down, which was from the Gravity's Rainbow album, which was a little after her popularity phase, really, when she was really big on the charts. Mm-hmm. We do that and we turn that into a little bit more of a jam, and we give everybody in the band an 8 or 16 bar solo to kind of show off a little bit. But other than that, it's a pretty much note for note recreation of what you would hear on the album. Missy, our lead singer, nails Pat Benatar, the way she sounds.
Same one that I met, right? In Knoxville.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. She has really captured the essence of Pat and just kills it. And she's one of the hardest working musicians I've ever been with. So they're going to see an authentic sounding Pat Benatar when they come to see our show, and not just a girl who can hit the notes but doesn't really sound like Pat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the defining things two of the defining things that separate us is we really do strive for the accuracy of the song itself, but we also have somebody who literally sounds like Pat Benatar. So that's the difference. There's a lot of tribute bands out there that have singers who are great singers, but they don't necessarily sound like the singer that they're tributing. And Missy really does sound like Pat. So I got really lucky when I found her. And when I did find her, I didn't think she would want the gig because she already had her own band and recording career and everything. So when she said yes, it just, made my my decade.
Down the phone. What did you say?
Right. Because, and I didn't know her very well. I knew who she was. I'd heard of her here in the Nashville area, but it was my keyboard player that had recommended her. So we went to go see her. And as soon as I heard her, I knew that she was the one. I was not expecting that. Our previous Pat Benatar is a dear friend of mine, love her to death, amazing singer, has sung professionally for decades and has backed up some of the biggest names in music. But she didn't sound like Pat, but she sounded really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference between the two. Is Missy's able to kind of hit that tonality that Pat has, that the timbre, everything about her. So I was blessed with both singers because both were extremely good at what they do. Or should say both are extremely good at what they do. But Missy just somehow is able to capture the essence of Pat in her vocal tone. So
Well,
I'm really lucky.
I remember talking with the keyboard player and your bass player, or the bass player at the time. I don't think he's with you anymore. But
well, he was that time. That was our fill-in bass player.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, these guys have played with everybody. I mean, the depth of experience that your band is. I mean, each one of those guys could almost write a book. Just
right.
Talking about who they played with and some of the stories with them. So that's what blew me away. That there was that kind of depth and that type of commitment to excellence that I know you for. These guys were also like that. So I'm curious, of all the people you could have put together a tribute band on, what made you decide on Pat Benatar instead of another act?
There's lots of other acts I would have loved to have done whose guitar playing I love.
And I've seen you mimic them too, so I know you could have pulled it off.
If it was about me, that's what I would have done. But at the time, I had just got back into playing guitar. We discussed earlier, I hadn't really played in 10 years or more. I just got back into playing guitar, and the bass player that we were just talking about that you saw in Knoxville, he and another friend had contacted me on Facebook and said, "Hey, do you want to come join our Jefferson Starship tribute band?" And I thought, sure, I love that old Starship stuff. Not Starship, but Jefferson. It's all good.
Yeah.
I love it all. But so we started doing that, but that tribute wasn't really going anywhere because we couldn't find a consistent Mickey Thomas.
Yeah.
Somebody who's really dedicated. Right. I mean, find the voice alone, let alone the dedication. The thing we were talking about earlier about really learning those songs and the nuance of all of it. And, so Cindy, who was the Grace Slick in that, who was our first Pat Benatar, was there. And I'm like, man, why is she not doing anything as a lead vocalist? So I asked her, I said, do you want to do Pat Benatar? Because there was no other Pat Benatar in our region. There's one in Florida, but there's nobody else around here that I can really find. I think there might be one in Atlanta, not sure. But nobody here in Nashville or in the Tennessee area. So we decided to start doing that. And so I assembled a bunch of people and got it rolling, and then COVID hit. But that was really the impetus. I set it up for her, not for me. Now, that being said, I love Neil. I love his playing. It was a real challenge because it's way outside of my style. Those first 6 months, I spent a lot of time woodshedding, trying to capture his Neil-isms. So he doesn't think like other guitar players. He doesn't play like other guitar players. So it was definitely a challenge. But they're fun. Now, people may not realize this, but he's the guy that did the solo on Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield and helped produce that song and rearrange it so it sounded a little more swingy and everything. And he had already had this reputation in the guitar community, at least, as I was growing up. He was well respected. Everybody loved Neil. I loved it for that aspect too. It was going to challenge me as a player to get outside of my, hair metal roots, so to speak, playing a bunch of shred crap, and then really focus on saying something within the song to the T. Like I said, I can mimic pretty much anybody, but I've never given it that much detail because I never wanted to sound like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I would cop it for the most part and then just add my own stuff to it. Well, with this, I don't really get to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really a challenge to sit down and figure out exactly what he's doing.
And be disciplined to stay with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes it was really hard because Neil likes to start solos the same way. So he'll start on a note and just hang on that note forever before he actually goes into the solo. So when you've got 3 or 4 of those solos doing that, you can't remember which one goes which song. So it took quite a while for me to not have to think about it anymore, and to kind of do that, because you're always reliant on audio cues as a musician to know where you are in a song and what's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would kind of fool you every now and then. So but that's why we chose Pat. I had an amazing vocalist that wasn't doing anything. I knew Pat had a deep catalog of hits, and there wasn't any in the area, and I knew that the challenge was going to be, exciting.
Cool.
So
Now you've given us good detail on the mechanics of the song. With all that said, I'll give you a two-pronged question. Then I'm going to have another two-pronged question after that. What is the most difficult Benatar song that you do? Or let me rephrase that. What's the most difficult Benatar song to do, and do you do it?
Out of all the ones I know, we do all the hardest ones. Now, I'm a Pat fan, but I can't say I know every song on every album enough to claim which is the hardest. The hardest to play for me depends on a couple things. Hell is for Children is difficult because there's some pretty big stretches on the chordal work there in the verse sections. I will screw that up when I first start playing it because my hand isn't used to that stretch, and sometimes it just kind of locks up for a second. So it takes a minute for me to get that. The hardest to do consistently is Anxiety because of the frantic pace of it, and keeping that chug going exactly at the same tempo the whole time. The hardest solo is Precious Time, but it's also my favorite solo by Neil. So I spend a lot of time working on that one because it's very nuanced, but there's also some sweeps at the very end. There's 5 sweeps in a row that come at the very end that you have to nail. So those would be the 3 hardest to play. I'm Gonna Follow You isn't hard, but the way it's played is a challenge, again, because of the dynamics of the song. So there's different things about different things that kind of affect that, difficulty level. But on a sheer technical aspect, Hell is
Similar question, a little bit differently. What is, excuse me, what is the most expected or expected song / and do you do it?
Love is a Battlefield is the most requested. We do it, although there are times when technology doesn't want to cooperate, so we don't always have it in the set list when showtime hits. And in its own way, that is very difficult just from a timing thing. There's a lot of space in that song because there isn't a lot of guitar in that song. So there isn't a whole lot of extra cues for people to go by in there. I'll cover a lot of extra ground, but I try to keep it fairly quiet so it doesn't sound like it's out of place.
Right.
Because it's not in the song itself. But that's the most requested by far. But yeah, that one relies on technology, and sometimes it just doesn't want to cooperate. So it doesn't always make the set that night.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to ask this one. I'm sure you get asked a lot. Have you heard from the Benatar camp at all?
Nope.
No?
No. They do follow our pages, both Neil's page and the Benatar Geraldo page, but that's as good as it gets. Most bands don't acknowledge the tribute bands to begin with good reason. They know that somebody else is making money off of them. We're a parody act when you really break it down to it. We're just, copycats, right? So All the credit goes to that original artist. And there's a lot of tribute bands out there that just absolutely suck. They have no business calling themselves a tribute band, so they got to be careful with what they endorse, so to speak. And anything can be taken as an endorsement these days.
Yeah.
So I don't ever expect to hear from them. Would it be cool? Sure. Would it be cool the next time if they came to Nashville, if they contacted us and say, "Hey, you want to come up and do a song with us?" Absolutely, we do it in a heartbeat. But yeah, most bands won't contact a tribute artist. So if somebody claims that they're the endorsed by the band, take that with a huge, huge grain of salt.
Now, I do know for a fact that Australian Pink Floyd was asked to play David Gilmour's 50th birthday party back in the day.
There's a couple. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can probably use that for some clout, absolutely.
Yeah.
But most of the time that, stuff like that doesn't happen.
That's right. That's right.
And I talk to these guys quite a bit, especially the ones that live here in Nashville. You might get one of the artists if they're out doing nothing that night or whatever, and they come to the club and get up on stage and play with you. That would be cool. Like there was Richie Faulkner from Priest has done it here with one of the tribute bands. One of the guys from Iron Maiden got up with one of the tribute bands here once, and played a song with them. Izzy Hale would jump on stage in a heartbeat. I know she would. She does it all the time anyway. If I was up there, I've got another band that does 4 or 5 of her songs. If she was ever there, I know she probably would have no problem getting up on the stage and jumping in. That's about as close as an endorsement as you're ever going to get. So, yeah.
Cool. So is there a band? So you're being put on the spot as a consultant. You're being asked one question only. Somebody comes up to you and says, Mr. Lowry, I want to start a tribute band. Which band would you tell them don't even attempt? Regardless of their talent, you tell them don't do it. What band would you tell somebody not to tribute?
I don't know if I'd tell them not to tribute, other than you have to look at how many there already are and how established are they. If you're thinking about doing Fleetwood Mac, I'd probably say not the best choice, because there's so many and there's some really good ones. Don't do Guns N' Roses. There's too many. Don't do.
And they always screw up Sweet Child of Mine anyway. So
right. Kiss, Motley Crue. Most of the Motley Crue ones I've seen really aren't very good to begin with, but there's a couple out there that really are. What else? Tom Petty.
Yeah.
There's a ton of those. So when you're looking to start a band, especially a tribute band, it's all about where you're going to be able to get booked. And because you're expecting to make more money as a tribute band, you have to find a niche where that demand isn't already filled, because a lot of these clubs, once they've got a band that represents that artist, they're not going to pull a different one in.
Right.
So that's really how I would approach it. And then can you reliably pull it off? Right. Like my favorite band of all time is Toto. Not a chance in hell I'm doing a Toto tribute band, because to play that consistently night after night, and I can't sing like that. So I couldn't be the Steve Lukather, because I couldn't sing on top of trying to play the way that he plays. That guy is just a godlike genius. Yeah, he's beyond ridiculous. But there's the tribute in town, Child's Anthem, that nails it spot on. They're the best tribute band that I've ever seen. Best tribute band I've ever seen as far as it goes for nailing it note to note, and sounding exactly like the band. Barracuda, the tribute to Heart, America's tribute to Heart out here, same thing. Nail it note for note, sound exactly like the band, if not better. Those two Southern accents for the Tom Petty tribute out of Nashville, effing amazing. I wouldn't know the difference if I closed my eyes.
Seriously. Wow.
Yeah. So if you can do that, if you can represent the artist like that, then yeah, go ahead and try it, because then you have the possibility of unseating somebody from a venue, because you're going to probably play it better than they do. But if you can't really nail that sound and sound exactly like them, you're going to have a hard time with, tributes that are already established.
Yeah.
So you just, if you're going to try Queensryche, your ass better sound like Jeff Tate. Right? It's just the way it is. Yeah. So, that's really it. It's more about how much real estate is left for you to grab than anything.
Yeah.
And if there is none, then probably try something else. But the other second piece of advice is you have to have a band that has a deep enough catalog of hits. You need a legacy band, a band that's been on the radio forever and has got 15 top 40 hits, songs people know, because that'll fill up. You got to have 90 minutes to 3 hours on average, depending on where you're playing.
Yep.
So if you don't have that, then nobody's going to want to book you, right?
Yep.
If you picked a band that has two top hits, if they're one hit wonders, why are you tributing that? What are you going to play, right? And where are you going to put that one hit song?
Yeah.
Because you're going to make somebody either wait all the way through your show to hear it so they don't leave, right? Which is probably most likely.
And hack them off in the process.
Yeah, right. So, that's what people don't think about when they're starting tributes is, what's the viability of this, and realistically, how long can we do this before it just doesn't go anywhere?
Yeah.
So, those are the two big pieces of advice. And by no means do I think that I'm any kind of savant musician that can pull all this, right? I'm the guy that has to sit here 8-10 hours a day playing this shit over and 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 over to really pull off the sounds, the notes and the phrasing and all that. So it takes work.
Yep.
I'm not the guys in Child's Anthem that are all gifted Nashville studio musicians and touring musicians that have been doing it for decades, but the best of the best. I'm not that guy. So it takes me a lot of extra effort to do it.
Well, gosh, I just knew the name and you just slipped. It was the bass player, Will Lee, that was on the late night thing. He had that Beatles band called the Fab Faux, Faux.
Yeah.
No, we can't pronounce that right. And I guess they have every studio version of a Beatles song down to the note. I mean,
right.
Precisely. And that's, of course, guys like that have a zillion bands they play in, but I'm just told that I don't know if he's still doing it, but I remember when he first rolled it out, he and I have a mutual friend and a great guitar player in Dallas. In fact, that friend plays my theme song for all my interviews. It's called Roll the Dice. His name is Quentin Hope. But anyway, Will just like nails his part, nails the McCartney part because he's the bass player. But that's what people expect. They want to hear note for note. And I can say you guys do it with the Benatar group. And
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well worth the money. And I look forward to seeing you guys when you come back through here. What else you got going on? Well, first of all, what website, Facebook page, all that? Where can they easily go to find out all the rest of the stuff you got going on with the band?
The website is heartbreakertributeband.com. There is more than one Heartbreaker out there, so make sure it's ours. And you can always find it by the tagline, America's Tribute to Pat Benatar. So if you put that in your Google search, it'll pop up all the pages. I think the Facebook is just a Heartbreaker Tribute Band on Facebook. But if you pull up at Heartbreaker, you're only going to get 2 or 3. Just look for my ugly face and you'll find it. We're on Twitter at Heartbreaker NSH for Nashville. We're on Insta. I think it's the same thing, Heartbreaker NSH. And then
your TikTok.
TikTok is just mine. It's Lowry Agency. Okay. Yeah, that's the main places, and we're most active on Facebook and Instagram. We do put stuff on the Twitter, but nobody's really on Twitter anymore or uses it, so it's not quite, or X, I guess it's called now.
Yeah.
But we have it out there just in case. And then YouTube, just look up America's Tribute to Pat Benatar, Heartbreaker. So we're on there as well.
Well, I know I'll give this plug too, that you did a great interview with our friends over at D&D Dynamite 80s a month or so ago, and they treated you very well, and it was a fun interview to watch and listen to. And then I got to make fun of you the week after. So
that's right. Hey, and I'm still waiting for my cookies, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to bake them again because I ate them all already. So, well, my friend, it was fun for you to have this chat and to tell people about your band. I look forward to catching the guys when you come through Knoxville. And when I'm in Nashville, I'm going to catch any gig you happen to have going on when I'm there, because you're always worth the time and the money to listen to. You guys are phenomenal.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on today.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.